Jack Ebling here with Dan Kilbridge from Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City. Scene of Iowa's 37-6 trouncing of Michigan State Saturday. Dan, I don't think anyone quite saw this coming any more than perhaps they saw Michigan State being 8-0 at the start of the season.
Right, a lot of people predicted Michigan State would lose this game throughout the year. I just don't think anyone thought they would lose in such a convincing fashion. They fell behind 17-0, just as they did last week at Northwestern. Difference is they're playing Iowa this time, and that's a team that's not going to let you get back in the game.
Iowa scored on its first drive, and every other possession had in the first half. Didn't have to punt until the third quarter, and had an answer for everything Michigan State tried to do. But when Kirk Cousins is going to throw 3 interceptions and they run back the way the Hawkeyes did, Michigan State's never going to beat Iowa.
And it's not as though Iowa's defensive backs made tremendous plays. Cousins threw off his back foot a few times and really made some puzzling throws where you just didn't see a play to be made. I think the way in which Michigan State lost is the reason they got here in the first place. They won the turnover battle. They controlled the line of scrimmage by running the ball effectively and stopping the run. They certainly didn't do either of those things today.
Yeah, you can go through a litany of problems, but everything that got Michigan State to 8-0 was absent today. Could not run the ball at all. Couldn't really stop Iowa in terms of sound tackling. A lot of plays where Adam Robinson was able to squirm and get first downs. Secondary had a lot of breakdowns. And passing game, as you mentioned, Kirk Cousins had to try to do it himself, and he was handing Iowa a lot of points.
And they just fell behind so quickly that you got the feeling they didn't get to do what they wanted on offense. When you fall behind so quickly, you have to go to the air a lot more than you normally would. They couldn't rely on the run as they have in the past. And just a really puzzling performance, I think. Even though many predicted the loss, it was a strange day.
I never thought Michigan State would win this football game, but I thought they'd be in it all the way till the fourth quarter. And what do we know at this point after 9 weeks of play?
Well, we know that Michigan State's still a very good team. They've proved that over the course of the past 9 weeks. What we know now is they're no longer a national championship contender, and many people, I think, around the country will look at this game and say Michigan State was not for real in the past few weeks. I think that's fair to say that they weren't real as far as being a national contender, but they still have a chance to win the Rose Bowl, to get to the Rose Bowl, win the Big Ten. They're going to need some help, but they still have a chance to do some positive things this year.
Well, it's very easy to overreact to one day, positively or negatively, and we've seen Michigan State fans do both. But I think it's safe to say there are some things we know. Number one is you're never as good as you look when you're 8-0, and you're seldom as bad as it seems after a 31-point loss on the road, even if it is against what I believe is the Big Ten's best football team, despite a couple of slips along the way. I also think it's very clear now that the Big Ten is not going to have a team, Michigan State or any other team, in the national championship game. I also think it's very clear that Michigan State can and will be a Big Ten co-champion, at least if it wins its last 3 games. It holds its fate in its hands, can be 7-1, will get at least a share of its first Big Ten title in 20 years. It's also safe to say that if Michigan State wins its last 3, if Wisconsin wins out, which it should, and if Ohio State loses again, probably right here in Kinnick Stadium, Michigan State still would represent the conference in the Rose Bowl.
And I think every single Michigan State fan would have been happy with that at the beginning of the season. There's no reason a game like this should change those expectations or anything else of that nature. I think they are going to need some help, but luckily the schedule is in their favor, having Purdue and Minnesota at home, and then a trip to Penn State, which is down this year. So I think they can still accomplish everything they want to this year as far as long-term goals.
I'm more concerned with some fundamental problems, Dan. What happened to the running game we saw the first part of the season? Was it strictly a fact of the caliber of competition? Michigan State's not been able to run the ball most of this month.
I think it's been a combination of several things. Michigan State's offensive line hasn't played as tough as it has in the first part of the season. And also you see the running backs maybe hesitating a little bit more than they would have at the beginning of the year without that confidence in their offensive line. It seemed like Le'Veon Bell's maybe a step slower than he was, and that might just be a loss of confidence with the way the line has been playing. Could be a variety of factors, but I also think you have to consider Iowa's front 4, which Mark D'Antonio called the best they'll face all season. And I think he's absolutely right about that.
Yeah, there was no question which defensive front was better today. And Greg Jones missed a lot of tackles. He was made to look silly a number of times, just whiffing on Adam Robinson. I also think it's very clear in a situation like this that Michigan State cannot beat itself. Its margin of error is still relatively small in most cases. Can't have the personal foul penalty that Marcus Hyde had. can't have some of the holds on other plays that negate big games. If Michigan State's going to have any chance in a game like this on the road, it has to play good, solid, fundamental football. That didn't happen today.
And conversely, Iowa didn't pick up a penalty until the fourth quarter. They did all the little things right. It was Michigan State's game plan. The Hawkeyes just took it right away from them and really executed in all areas where the Spartans did not.
One game does not a season make, and there are 3 more for Michigan State to win a Big Ten championship. Jack Ebling here with Dan Kilbridge from Kinnick Stadium. Press coverage for SpartanTailgate.com.